stop. Before you romanticize the idea of marriage, I want you to ask yourself one question. Do you actually want to get married? Or were you just programmed to believe you should? Because somewhere between childhood fairy tales and Instagram engagements, we were conditioned to believe that marriage equals arrival. That once you say, I do, you finally made it. But what if I told you that most people who get married before 30 aren't walking into love, they're walking into limitation? Before we peel this open, pause for a second. Hit subscribe, like, and share this video, not just to support the channel, but because this conversation, it's the one no one dares to have. And trust me, by the end of this video, you won't just rethink marriage, you'll rethink yourself. So watch till the end, because what I'm about to tell you might save you from the biggest identity trap of your 20s. And if you haven't already watched our last video, do we even need marriage anymore? The answer will shock you. Make sure you do after this one. That video exposes the system. This one exposes the self. Let's start with the illusion, the clock. We're told that there's a right time for everything. Graduate by 22, be successful by 25, marry by 28, have kids by 30. And if you're not ticking those boxes, society whispers that something must be wrong with you. But here's the truth psychology doesn't sugarcoat. Your 20s are not for settling down. They're for waking up. Your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term decision-making, doesn't even fully develop until your mid to late 20s. So when you choose a lifelong partner before you've even fully met your own mind, what are you really choosing? You're committing from a self that's still under construction. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "It is not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages." And he was right, because before 30, most people don't even know how to be friends with themselves. They confuse attachment for connection, familiarity for destiny, and chemistry for compatibility. And then they spend their 30s trying to unlearn what they rushed into. Your 20s are a psychological storm, a decade of becoming. You change jobs, change beliefs, change environments, change dreams. You even change the way you love. According to research in developmental psychology, your 20s are marked by what's called identity exploration. It's when you're testing who you are through experiences, not commitments. So when someone gets married during that phase, they're often locking in a version of themselves that's not finished forming. That's why so many people wake up at 33, sitting next to someone they no longer recognize, not because the love vanished, but because they did. See, the tragedy isn't failed marriages, it's premature ones. Because when you get married too early, you don't just marry your partner, you marry your confusion, your unhealed patterns, your insecurities, and then you call it fate when it falls apart. Psychologists call this identity foreclosure. It's when you make a major life decision, like marriage, before fully exploring your options or your self-concept. In other words, you've closed your identity too early. And that's not romance. That's psychological suffocation. Let's be brutally honest. Most early marriages aren't built on maturity. They're built on fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of falling behind. Fear of not being chosen. So instead of choosing a partner out of alignment, people choose one out of anxiety. They say, I'm ready for marriage, but what they really mean is, I'm tired of uncertainty. Love that's born out of loneliness always turns into dependency, and dependency eventually turns into resentment. Because here's the paradox. The more you depend on someone to complete you, the more incomplete you feel without them. And when that illusion cracks, you start mistaking absence for betrayal and self-discovery for selfishness. Plato once wrote that love is the pursuit of wholeness, but he never said it comes from another person. True wholeness begins when you stop outsourcing your peace. Marriage before 30 often interrupts that process. It replaces emotional understanding with shared survival. And that's why so many couples grow up apart instead of together, because love requires two whole people, not two halves trying to make each other complete. Our culture sells the idea that the earlier you find love, the more successful you are in life. But here's what's rarely discussed. The institution of marriage was never designed for emotional fulfillment. Historically, it was economic, a contract, not a connection. You didn't marry for love, you married for survival. And yet here we are in the 21st century, still carrying ancient programming into modern lives. We talk about love like it's a race, but what's the prize? Half the time, it's validation, the dopamine hit of being wanted, the social approval that says, you're not alone, you're desirable, you're normal. But normal is the most dangerous addiction of all. Psychologically, humans crave certainty. It gives the illusion of control. Marriage gives that illusion, but illusion doesn't equal peace. In fact, most early marriages fail not because people don't love each other, but because they loved an idea more than they loved the person. You were taught to chase the wedding, not the marriage, the event, not the evolution, the fantasy, not the foundation. And then reality hits. Bills, burnout, emotional immaturity, incompatible goals, and suddenly that perfect couple everyone envied becomes another cautionary tale whispered at dinner tables. Let's talk science for a moment. Studies show that emotional intelligence, the ability to manage your emotions, communicate effectively, and empathize, peaks after 30. That's when your brain, values, and sense of self stabilize. That's when you begin to recognize patterns in yourself and in others. Before that, most people love through projection. They fall for potential, not reality. They love through fantasy, not observation. And when fantasy fades, they mistake disillusionment for betrayal. But after 30, something shifts. You start craving peace over passion, depth over drama. You stop needing someone to save you because you've already learned how to save yourself. That's when love becomes a choice, not a compulsion. As the philosopher Alain de Botton said, compatibility is an achievement of love. It shouldn't be its precondition. In other words, love isn't found, it's built. And building something real requires emotional maturity, patience, and a sense of self, all of which are still growing in your 20s. Let's be real. Our parents' generation had a different timeline. By 25, they could afford a home, a family, and stability. But today's generation is drowning in debt, burnout, and existential confusion. We're not just surviving life, we're decoding it. We're healing trauma, redefining gender roles, questioning systems, and learning emotional literacy, all while trying to stay sane. So marrying early in this generation isn't just emotional risk, it's economic and psychological sabotage. You're trying to build a forever in a world that's changing every 6 months. It's not that marriage is bad, it's that marriage too early often freezes your growth right before your greatest transformation. After 30, something happens. You meet yourself. You failed enough to understand resilience. You've loved enough to know the difference between chemistry and compatibility. You've lost enough to realize what's actually worth keeping. And that wisdom, that grounded self-awareness, becomes the soil where real love grows. Because you're no longer searching for someone. You're searching for peace with someone. You no longer need a mirror to feel seen. You've already looked inside. That's when marriage becomes sacred again. Not as a social badge, but as a conscious decision. People often say, it's okay, we'll grow together. But growth isn't synchronized. Sometimes one person evolves faster. Sometimes one wants freedom while the other craves comfort. And if that growth threatens the relationship, it's not growth, it's containment. Before 30, you're not meant to grow with someone. You're meant to grow into yourself. You can't merge paths until you've found your own. So no, this isn't a war on marriage. It's a call for awake love. Love that's chosen consciously, not inherited blindly. Love that doesn't come from loneliness, but from wholeness. Love that doesn't beg, but builds. When you marry too young, you give up the privilege of meeting your highest self before meeting your life partner. And that's one of life's greatest losses. So if you're single, don't rush it. If you're in love, take your time. And if you're married too soon, don't panic. Growth doesn't always mean leaving. Sometimes it means evolving together, but consciously this time. Now, I want you to pause and ask yourself, who are you when you're not someone's partner? What parts of you are waiting to be discovered, not shared? Because until you answer that, you're not ready for forever. Marriage should never be the beginning of your life. It should be the continuation of a life already lived. So if this message hit home, like this video, not for the algorithm, but to remind yourself that you chose growth over pressure. Comment below. Tell me your story. Did you marry early? Are you questioning the timeline you were given? I read every single one because your truth helps someone else wake up. Share this video with that one friend who keeps saying, I'm running out of time. Because they're not. They're just beginning. And don't forget to subscribe to Right Rhythm, because next week, we're diving into the myth of the perfect relationship. And it will challenge everything you think you know about love. Until then, remember this. You're not late. You're evolving. And anyone worth marrying will meet you on that path, not rush you off it. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Until then, take care.